Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Ken Keltner October chapter meeting. It's going to be an interesting evening. Our guest tonight is Don August, who has a new book out, Pitching to the Corners, My Post-MLB Career Abroad. I've been reading the book. I got it like last Friday. It was hot off the press last week. Got it mine on Friday. I'm about 3/4 of the way through. I've been reading another book I picked up at the convention. Some very good writers. I've got a number of their books, and I'm bored to tears. So Don saved me because this book is very readable. A lot of great stories. It's what we in SABR love. So thank you, Don, for writing the book, and welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Couple of quick questions. Icebreaker type. What is your earliest baseball memory?
Okay, I guess from the time I was born, which I don't remember, but my family were baseball fans. My grandpa on my mom's side was a big baseball fan. He loved baseball so much. He had two daughters, my mom and her sister, but he still coached boys baseball leagues and stuff like that. And so always I can remember the ball games were on TV. So I grew up in Southern California, so I remember listening to the Dodgers and Angels playing their baseball games back in the day. And I think the first memory I have is me and my dad. One day he brought home I was like 5 years old, probably right around there. And he brought home a plastic bat and some wiffle balls. And I remember we went out to the front yard, and I remember there's some old carpeting. Then he cut them out in the shapes of bases. And he just began throwing the ball to me out there, and I'd be swinging away trying to hit this wiffle ball. So that's like the first memory I ever have of about playing baseball with my dad and always having those baseball games in the background.
Cool. You grew up in the LA area, so were the Dodgers your favorite ball club?
I liked them both. And some people say, how can you like both? Well,
Yeah.
one was the National League, one was in the American League. So I wanted them to both win. They didn't play each other during the year. They didn't have, interleague play at the time. So I wanted to have a freeway LA World Series. So the Dodgers were always a much better team when I was growing up. The Angels had a lot of below 500 seasons and not so many good years. And so I just hoped that they would get better. And they eventually did get better. I remember it was finally in 1979, they made the playoff. They didn't get much further than that. But, that was my only hope was Angel-Dodger World Series. So those are my two favorite teams.
And now their ownership is so bad, the Angels don't have a prayer, it seems like, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I feel like their owner tried to get all these players, but for whatever reasons, it just didn't work out. So too bad.
Yeah.
My family still lives out in Southern California, and they follow the Angels still. And, they wish it could be better. Unfortunately, it hasn't been that way for a while, but, baseball can change.
Yeah. Who's your favorite player as a kid?
Well, when people ask me that, I say all the players who played for the Angels and the Dodgers. So I always root for them to be the best, and I knew all of them. I knew their stats, but I think non-Angel Dodger players, I think the first ones that kind of came to mind were Carl Yastrzemski and Pete Rose. I don't know why they chose. I just kind of followed them. They were doing a lot of good things, and I followed their stats, and they always were up there, and they were great players. So non-Dodger Angels, those are the two guys I can come off the top of my head.
I think I always like Yaz just because of his name. It was an interesting name. He was a good ball player to go along with it. So I think that was some of my appeal with Yaz. So he had a tougher name than I do. Your book is, I really enjoy the book, and it's really based on your post-major league career. So the only part of the book that seems to be chronological is the first chapter, which covers your early formative days playing baseball. And after that, it's some very interesting topics. You've got 13 chapters, and every chapter name is a song title that most of us recognize most of the songs, which I thought that is a very interesting idea. And I'm sure you can go on and tell us about that when you get a chance. But let's talk a little about your career first, then we can talk about the book. So your career spans a lot of different things, from playing in the U.S. and abroad, but it started earlier. And one of the highlights I would assume is that you played on the 1984 Olympic baseball team, which was a trial basis for baseball. And 17 of the 20 players made the
Okay, mother, we'll get up.
I'm getting up.
All right.
I don't hear you. I don't hear you. I don't see your picture. I don't know if you can hear me.
Getting up.
Honey.
been quite the cast of characters that you played with.
Okay, I think I've just heard you speaking again here about a cast of characters. I don't hear anything new though.
You, Dennis, you're muted.
There we go. I see you now.
Okay,
On there, yeah.
There you go.
so it came back muted. I don't know what happened. All of a sudden it just everybody froze up. It pulled it signed off, and then it signed me right back on. So yeah.
Klingons.
Yeah.
All right, hold on. Hold on.
So I don't know how much you heard of that, Don. I was talking about your career starting and that you played on the 1984
Yeah.
Olympics team.
Yeah, I heard
And-
that. You asked
Yeah.
last thing I heard you say there was 17 of the 20 players made it to the major leagues, and that was the last thing I heard.
Yeah, that's about the last thing I said. I noticed everything was frozen up. That must have been quite the experience and quite the group of ball players to be associated with.
Yeah, that definitely was like a big time thing. Baseball was being introduced in the Olympic Games in Los Angeles in 1984 to see if it would catch on and continue in the Olympics. Back in those days, it was still the amateur athletes in the Olympics. So the process was going to get, the top college players, which they had done year after year for Team USA before the Olympics. They went on the World Games and, did all these traveling around the world, playing baseball against other countries. But so they amassed the 31 top players in the college that season, met in Louisville, Kentucky, and we trained for a week there. And we were going to then go on to this grueling long tour to get to the final 20-man roster. And, it was like 20-something games and 20-something days and 20-something cities. It was like just really crazy. So we arrived there, we trained for a week, kind of get a little tryout look at, and then we went to play our first 2 games of this tour, and we made our first cuts. So we went from 31 down to 25. And then we go on for another couple of weeks before we make the final 20-man roster. So it was unbelievable because I came from a little small college in Southern California called Chapman College at the time, and Division II, little small school. So, we played against all the top Division I schools around, and and all these teams would come into town and we'd play them too. When they played, they were pretty much scheduled to play the big guys, and we'd get some games in with them too. But it was big time where when we arrived, it's like when we went to our locker rooms, it was like Christmas Day. It's like all this equipment, several pairs of cleats, turf shoes, running shoes, sweatsuits, and 2 or 3, 4 different uniforms and the whole works. And so we were getting treated like first class. And we played in this tour. We played in 12 major league stadiums, against before some Major League Baseball games. And we played Japan in a 7-game series around the country, Korea, and all these local all-star teams and all that kind of stuff. But, it was like, we were like big time in it. All these other guys were playing in the big Division I colleges, but, we're playing in major league stadiums with big crowds and people chanting USA and the whole works. So that was really exciting. And then especially when we played in the Olympics themselves, we got to that 20-man roster, we played all of our games in sellout crowds in Dodger Stadium, which was like over 50-something thousand people, all again chanting the USA thing, and it just gave you chills up your spine. And we didn't play in front of crowds like that in college, So this was kind of really good for us guys to get this kind of experience and kind of really prepared us for our professional careers that was just ahead of us.
Who are some of the players that were on that team, Don?
One of the players was BJ Surhoff, ended up being my catcher in the major leagues. He played with the Brewers, started of his career. Mark McGuire, I'm sure everyone's heard about Mark McGuire. He was on the team. Will Clark, well-known another ball player, was on the team. Barry Larkin, who is the only guy now who's made the Hall of Fame off of our team. And funny thing about that, he wasn't really one of our starters. He was kind of a backup infielder. So, we had him there. Shane Mack and Oda B. McDowell were a couple of our outfielders. Billy Swift had a long career in the major league. So, we had it's pretty solid team at the time. And people said that we were probably the best amateur team that was put together, because typically the Team USA for that upcoming summer, a lot of the seniors were graduated, or a lot of the players who got drafted wouldn't be able to play on that Team USA. So, Team USA and Major League Baseball made a deal that they can get all of the players, and then once the Olympics were done with, we can move on to our professional careers. And then we got paid. We didn't get our signing bonuses until the Olympics were over, so we'd keep that amateur status.
Amazing. I see, Alec, you got a comment here. Oh, I just lost it quickly. I'm afraid to touch my computer. I'm going to freeze everything up again. Very strong squad. Yeah. Amen.
Now, the thing was, we lost to Japan in the final game. So a silver medal, I can't complain. People, oh, not a gold. Like, well, I know it kind of stinks being second best in the world at something, but, try to play it off a little bit. But we took it hard, because we were the team that should have won it. It was in our home country. And, we did play Japan in a 7-game series before the Olympics, and we beat them 6 out of 7 times pretty handily. But as in baseball, we all know, if we follow it, that on any given day, one team cannot play, and they outplayed us on that day. And that's the way it went. So I think about it a lot of times, but still, it was all extremely great memories though, altogether.
Who else pitched on that team with you?
Let's see. We had John Hoover was our starting pitcher, who opened up the first game and pitched the final game. Billy Swift, Scott Bankhead. Then it was myself, Bobby Witt, Pat Pasillo, Mike Dunn, and Sid Akins. I think those are the 8. If I remember off the top of my head, all of us 8 pitchers there on our squad. So some of those pretty good major league careers too.
You guys ever talk to each other, ever in any communications amongst the group at all?
Yeah, sometimes it just comes and goes. It's kind of the way baseball was always. Is we're professionally. Let's start out with that. Is you're together for day after day, month after month after month after month. It's a long season, and then the off season comes around, and you say, "Yeah, let's keep in touch, and we'll go do this and that." And everyone just kind of unwinds, rests, and next thing you know, spring training will roll again. And you might talk to a couple guys, but you didn't really do as much as you thought or you said you would. So now that these Olympics have been done, and we've run into each other over the years during while we're still playing baseball professionally, but after that, it's like every now and then, some guy will pop on and give me a phone call or send me a message, and we'll chat and talk, and it's just like we haven't left each other. You often hear people kind of say that, and that's really how it is. Like, it might be 8 years, 10 years that you last spoke to the guy, but it just felt like you just spoke to him last week, type of a thing. So a little bit here and there. I hope and kind of wish we kind of had some more reunion stuff. We only met one time as a group, and I had actually contacted Team USA and say, why don't you get a little, reunion, back in LA in 28, it's like, that'd be a good thing to bring all the players back and meet up and do something, before and during the Olympics. So hopefully someday we could do something before we get too old,
Yeah. Well, maybe, aren't they bringing baseball back to the Olympics in the next Olympics? Is it next?
In
So
LA.
maybe they'll do a reunion or something then, just kind of, that'd be good. That'd be fun.
Yeah. We'd be back in LA again. Why not? I think that'd bring a good reason, a good kind of topic back to LA.
Yeah. In the book, you mentioned pitching not only with the Olympics, but the thrill of having been to Dodger Stadium and watching all kinds of games, you got to pitch on that mound. So that had to be very special also.
Oh yeah. Well, again, watching the Dodgers all those years and gone to several games there in Dodger Stadium. And then, okay, we're playing these Olympic games there. And I kind of mentioned in the book that I was brought in, my first game that I got into was a 16-1 lead against Italy in the 9th inning. So I kind of joked, well, I saved the 15-run lead, but I was happy as heck, man, that I pitched in Dodger Stadium. I was on that mound and I got in the games. I'm in the books, you know, and I thought that was great that Coach Gato got me in. And then I got in the next game after that in a 12-0 lead. Oh my God, 2 games. That's even greater, man. So just not just one game in 1 inning, but I got in 2 games. So, and then eventually I pitched in a big game. Then he came right back to me again. So I ended up pitching in 3 of the games there, the 5 there in Dodger Stadium again, where I watched many games, and it was very exciting. Especially I'm from the LA area, that I had friends and family who were at the game to watch me do it too.
Yeah, special. So then you were drafted in 1984 by Houston, played with them for a few years, got to know the organization, probably was feeling pretty comfortable when you were then dealt to Milwaukee in 1986 for Danny Darwin, along with your co-author on the book, Mark Knudsen.
Yep.
Did you feel like that was giving you an opportunity with coming to Milwaukee, or would you prefer staying in Houston? Did you have a feeling at the time of the trade on that?
Yeah, at the time, well, when they first called me, it was early in the morning. I was playing in Tucson in AAA with the Astros and feeling pretty good about myself. I've been pitching really good. I thought I was going to get an opportunity real soon. And I've been there for a couple of years. I've been to 2 major league spring trainings. I went to a couple of their instructional leagues. So I knew everybody in the organization. I knew all the major league coaches. I knew all the minor league coaches. I knew all the administrative people there. And I was very comfortable and very happy. And then when I got that early morning phone call, I was shocked. I was stunned. Like, wow, it was like you had to pitch something. Did this really just happen? And then I went, you know, the Brewers then called me right after and welcomed me to the organization. But I was kind of sad because I felt like I knew everyone and I was good to go. Now I'm going to another organization where they didn't draft me in the first round. I wasn't their bonus baby. I wasn't like one of their top prospects. I just felt like, oh God, I'm now just another guy battling out with all those guys within their organization. So I was kind of sad to go. And I felt that I would have been in the major leagues a little sooner than I did with the Brewers. But once you get there, you know, you're all good and happy about it. So it worked out. I made it. But at the time, I wished, you know, I was sad to leave my Houston team.
Yep. And you were called up in June of '88 by the Brewers.
Yeah.
In the book, you didn't have this. I'm always curious on how you're told that you're going to the show. Was there anything special that your manager did with you? You know, some guys are, you know, right to the point, tell you that. Others, you know, make it a occasion or make it a joke or something, you know, just to put some pressure on you. Was your call up, or your notice about you being promoted, anything special that you recall?
Not really, nothing super special. Because in the spring training of '88, I was sent down to go back to minor league camp at the end, and I was kind of disappointed. You know, my thoughts were, why did you trade for me if you're never going to give me this chance? You know, and I've been pitching really good, but the minor league director and a lot of people were telling me, don't worry, Don, just be ready. You're going to be the first guy we call up. Now, normally they don't tell people that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So after about, and I ended up having I pitched like in 10 starts. So I got into June, and they hadn't made any moves, and they had to make one move with a pitching deal, but they called and told me, and they explained it to me why they had to do this. Is the guy that's going to bring up real quick. He's only going to be there for a week, basically. So don't read anything into it. Just keep being ready. We like you a lot. So then when it finally came around, you know, you're just very relieved. I remember watching. Now there was an injury. Someone got hurt, and instead of calling me up, because I was really hot at the time, and I thought here it is, and they put our long reliever guy into pitch, and So I remember I was in Denver where our AAA team was at the time, and I went and watched the game on TV, and I go, okay, this is the guy they picked before they give me a chance. And the guy took a no-hitter into the 9th inning. And I go, oh my God, here's my chance. They're going to think this guy's the guy and blah, blah, blah. And I thought, oh shoot, when is this going to happen? And probably about 3 days later, it was like another day at the ballpark there in Denver. And after the game, the manager called me into his office, and I kind of had a feeling, maybe, is this it? And he just kind of said, hey, the Brewers are bringing you up. Congratulations and all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't anything, no funny jokes or pranks or nothing like that. And I was kind of told to expect it, but you just feel like, man, but when is it ever going to happen? When is the day going to finally come? And when it does, it's an overwhelming feeling, and it makes you very happy. And then they say, oh, hey, you're going to be on a plane tomorrow morning. Oh God. Now the big thought is who, I don't have much time to call anybody. I called my parents real quick and maybe one other person, but I had to pack all my stuff up and get ready, be on an airplane the next day to fly to Milwaukee. And people had to find out right after that. But it was a great feeling that once you actually I got to the stadium, and old Milwaukee County Stadium, and you go in, and I've seen things like you've seen in movies where the guy walks in and he sees his uniform hanging. That really is a special thing. You just look around, you see everyone's names in front of their lockers, and all of a sudden you see your locker with a big league uniform sitting there waiting for you. And man, it's the best thing there is.
Yeah, that would be. And you had a pretty decent first season. You were the Brewers Rookie of the Year. You went, hang on, you're 13-7. You started 22 of the 24 games that you appeared in. So you had a pretty decent season.
Yeah, I was in a groove.
Mm-hmm.
And that first day I got called up, they said, you're going to go out in the bullpen and just sit here, but they said, you're here to be a starter, but sit out in the bullpen, just kind of get a look. And, a lot of times what they want to do is to break the ice, is try to get you in a game, at least get an inning in, just to kind of break that and prepare you. So that first game though, I did get in the game. I was out in the bullpen, and that guy who had the no-hitter into the 9th inning was starting again that day. And he was pitching pretty good to start the game out, but he kind of started running out of gas about the 5th inning. He gave up some runs, and then they brought another guy to come in relief. And then as soon as he went out to finish that inning off, the phone rang again in the bullpen, and told the bullpen pitching coach to get me ready, guys. I was going into the next inning. So that was my debut. And the great thing about that is we're playing the California Angels. So that game was being televised back to my hometown. And a lot of people who didn't know I was called up just flipped the ball game on, and in the 6th, 7th innings, they saw me pitching. So that's how they figured out that I was there. So that was the way it broke out. And then I was in the starting rotation, and I had a nice, good groove, and carried out to the end of the year. So 13-7, got some votes for the Rookie of the Year, came a little short, but very happy, successful season.
And you played 4 years with the Brewers, and finished 34-30 with a 4.64 ERA, and then it sort of it kind of fell apart, and like it sounded like nobody knew what they wanted. How I read that. How do you see the end of your career with the Brewers?
I felt like sometimes I look at it, because I felt my next year I pitched good. My ERA wasn't too good, but that and same thing with my 4th year. I pitched a lot of good games. I pitched a lot of good games. I had a few bad games, like pretty much everybody. My bad games were pretty not good, and it kind of destroyed my numbers overall. But for the role, they would skip my start or move me up. They always, for some guys that were just coming off surgeries, we got to make sure this guy pitches this day, but it's okay if we bump you. I go, whatever's good for the team. So I always sacrificed and did what was best. And sometimes like I said, I think I pitched too good too soon. Sometimes, a lot of times when you come up as a rookie, they let you take your lumps and bumps, and they kind of guide you through it, and you get better and better. But I think I did so well that they expected me to be at that level all the time. And when I struggled, I didn't have much of a leash in my opinion. And by the time my 4th year came around, you always see the young next guys coming up, and they took me off the roster after the season, which enabled me to be a free agent. So I thought that was an opportunity for me to move on, to a place where I thought, where someone would really like me and want me. And, what happened was I ended up signing a deal with the San Francisco Giants. A lot of the Houston Astros coaches and the general manager too, Al Rosen, was over there in San Francisco. So I went over there thinking I had a lot of these people who knew me, who drafted me. And, but the bad thing that happened to me was about a week or so before spring training came around, I was told I was going to be going for the 5th starting spot and or the long relief role. And a couple of weeks before spring training started, the Giants made a big old trade with the Seattle Mariners. They traded Kevin Mitchell away, who was, if everyone remembers, was an all-star home run hitter and, did a lot of great things. So they traded him to the Mariners, and the Giants got 3 major league pitchers in return. So that kind of threw a little monkey wrench in my plans there. And by the end of spring training, I got released by the Giants. And then ever since that point on, I was battling my way in the minor leagues and end up finding my way into the international scene, and still had a fun, remarkable career, I think.
Yeah. Well, it made for one heck of a book, because the only chronological part of the book is that first chapter, which kind of covered you from even playing as a kid through high school and the college and all that. And then after that, and I really liked the approach, and it took me a little bit to get used to, okay, the next chapter wasn't chronological, it's by topics.
Yes.
And then so you could have been playing in different places, and that really works well, because it really does a good comparison of the culture and things and different places you were living and all. And I really appreciate it. So you go back through like the second chapter, Cool Stop the Rain. And was it in Taiwan where they had a very interesting way of they played in the rain and how they kind of sopped up the rain? So you may mention that. Third chapter is about being a traveling man, speaking in tongues and different language and learning the language. It was interesting. Cheeseburger in Paradise was about the food. The family man having family visiting you primarily over in Taiwan and some of those challenges. So it was, to me, I have not traveled a lot, so I'm living vicariously through your travels. So, and I enjoyed that. And as a baseball fan, as a person who really knows and loves baseball, it's not that much baseball. There's baseball in it, but it's really just the whole culture and all your experiences that really make for a very interesting book. So
yeah, that's how that idea was when I saw all those hundreds of pages that Mark Knudsen, it's all written chronologically. He came up with the idea was, why don't we just put these in these different topics? And me and him, we were roommates when we were in the Astros organization. Then we were roommates when we both went to the Brewers. So we both have this affinity for rock and roll music, the classics and all that. And so he came up with the idea is let's make these. Let's not write it chronologically. Let's write it topically. And each topic will use a rock song that's kind of the topic of that chapter. So that's how that all kind of worked out. And I like the idea. And, it tells you about the rain stories and typhoons and earthquakes, a lot of things like that. And the types of foods I had to eat, which were pretty strange. And, I always consider like I had a pretty tough stomach. I can eat all kinds of food. I'm always willing to try to eat different foods, but there was some food that I looked at and I didn't even know what it was. And, when you're hungry, you got to eat. And then when you're eating people with foods that, and those people in different countries, that's their favorite foods and stuff. So you can't sit there and say it stinks and you want to spit it out. You had to be a little diplomatic. So I ate some things that were pretty tough to eat, but overall, to tell you the truth, a lot of the times it was just pretty normal or basic. Sometimes pretty bad, but sometimes pretty good too. And you go, wow, what is that, man? I want to eat that again. So yeah, it goes through the different topics and it, goes through all those chapters. What's the other one? People Are Strange, just a bunch of different kind of weird people and situations I've come across. I think like helped me, I guess, to make this book anyways was, I always been that adventurous type of guy anyways. Funny things always seem to find me. I always kind of thought. So after all these number of years playing that, had plenty of these stories to tell about. You know, the other chapter is talking about what's the one, the Italian bakery or restaurant, whatever, that talks about my time in Italy. People are
Yeah.
strange, you know, the strange guys I came across. I think the chapter that's gonna be the one I think people probably will like the most is chapter 8. Is it Rambling Gambling Man, something
Yeah.
like that's the story. Something about the gambling situations that was taking place in Taiwan there in the late 1990s. So that'd be one. I don't know if you got to that part yet, but a lot
I'm
of people
just
haven't that
into
one.
the chapter. I haven't got I haven't got to the gambling part. I'm the part where packing heat, some of those stories, people carrying weapons, all that was it was kind of it's scary. Some of the things I'm reading this and you're getting on buses, you're taking cabs, going places. You have no idea where you're going. You go down a dark street. I'm thinking, oh man, you're braver than I am because it got my attention very well. So I appreciated that. Real quick, Alec has another comment here. It would make a good movie. I think you're right. I think it would make a very good movie.
Well, I think we roll that into that thing.
Yeah.
Well, one of the books, we've sent out a couple books out for promotional type of stuff, and one of mine and Mark's former teammate was a guy named Mark Chiardi. He pitched briefly with the Brewers, that 1987 streak. They opened up with 13 wins. He won one and he lost the game that ended it. So he had a lot of arm troubles and this and that. We were roommates and friends and stuff. And he makes a lot of movies. I mean, a lot of those sport movies. I mean, the latest sport movies in the past over 10 plus years, he's made them. The movie Miracle on Ice. He produced that movie. He made what's the guy? Oh God, I can't think of it now. He was the guy that was sent down and played minor league baseball. He's a teacher and a coach, and all of a sudden he's throwing batting practice with teammates, to his kids, his team, and he made it back to the major leagues. I mean, the movie
The Rookie?
Secretariat.
Was that called The Rookie?
Yeah, there it is, The Rookie. There you go. The movie Secretariat, $1 Million Arm, the guy when he went to look in India for Major League Baseball prospects. So he's made several movies. So we sent him a copy, just in case his mind, he kind of maybe sees something. So that'd be great if that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I sent out a reminder Tuesday about this movie, and in the reminder I mentioned, and yes, we will talk about diarrhea. Now, and the reason for that is one of the things you said in your travels, you learned there's always 2 things you always have in your baseball bag. One of which, you said 2 bottles of water. Well, okay, I understand that. And the other item is something I would never think about. And one of the 2 items is what?
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper. And so some of the food you ate gave you some challenges. And in some of these foreign countries where you're playing, not only was toilet paper a problem, so was finding a bathroom or a place to do this. So can you tell some of those stories? I don't want to get too personal in your personal life there, but it was reading that and just going, I just would never think of that sort of thing. Living here, we take bathrooms and toilet paper so much for granted. So,
well, yeah, the food that you eat, it's different the way they cook it and how you eat it. So your stomach kind of gets a little gurgly at times. I learned that, when you go to the bathroom, a lot of these places where you actually can find a toilet, sometimes there's not toilet paper there, even at the baseball stadiums. And they really don't upkeep those things too clean and well either. They have in Asia, they have like those I call them the hole in the ground kind of toilets. It's just some porcelain on the ground and it's like a little hole in there and you got to squat over it and do your business, which is very uncomfortable. Again, if you have toilet paper, that'd be a bonus. So there's been times where on long bus rides out in the middle of nowhere, we had one of the team buses I had didn't have a toilet on it. So whenever we'd pull over after like say 12 hours and we still got 14 more hours to go, sometimes you had to go to the bathroom right outside, both ways. So it's just kind of part of the story. My wife kind of read that part of the chapter and she didn't really like that chapter so much, just talking about the bathroom. But a lot of guys I know who kind of read that chapter said, oh yeah, but that's part of baseball. And I know some of us guys, I think guys laugh at that stuff a little bit more so in that kind of a way. But the main thing was, it was part of the challenge of being in different countries around the world. The premise of this story really was like a former major league pitcher who stayed on the 5-star hotels and flew on charter airplanes everywhere and had everything as great as it was. Now I'm on these super long bus rides, having stomach issues and trying to find a place to go to the bathroom. It was all part of the story. You know, it's what you had to deal with as an American former Major League Baseball pitcher. Trying to make it back to the big leagues was also another underlying story to the whole thing. Is like, I always felt as long as you had a baseball uniform on, you always had a chance. Someone could see you. Scout can be anywhere in this world and get my opportunity back to the United States. And that was the whole shot about it too.
Yeah, and you know, and you talk about the chapter on traveling, man. It's really traveling to and from some of these countries, but traveling within the countries. You know, you mentioned the long bus rides. I think it was Mexico. You'd have those 20-hour bus rides, but traveling, just going places. It's going to restaurants and cabins. Just the whole travel thing was completely different than what we have in this country as well.
Yeah, try to I got used to speaking Spanish. You know, I learned a little bit of Spanish growing up in LA as a kid. And high school, I took Spanish and all that kind of stuff. And teammates in the past, I always tried to get to be better at speaking Spanish. But when I had to really actually use it for real, when I started playing in Mexico, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic, I was kind of getting that down. And I was able to communicate pretty decently well. But then when I went to Taiwan, it was Chinese. I didn't know one word in Chinese when I got over there. I was fortunate enough to meet one of my American teammates, was a guy who I was drafted with back in my Astro days. And he'd been there for about 6 years playing in Taiwan when I arrived. So he kind of showed me the ropes around, but I was impressed that when we got in cabs and they'd be able to speak to the guy in Chinese and we got to wherever we needed to get to. And I was very impressed. And I said, man, I go, you guys are good at this. And they go, oh, no, you'll catch on, you'll learn. So, well, after playing in 5 seasons there in Taiwan, I did learn pretty well. I never got fluent in Chinese by any means. I got okay, survivable, good conversation and that sort of thing. But the hard part about speaking Chinese is they speak in 4 different tones. So the word ma can mean 4 different things in the different tones, like ma, 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 ma. Those are 4 different words. So every time I started thinking I was getting good at it, some monkey wrench would kind of be thrown at me. And I tell some stories about that with one little inflection of one little word can really change the whole meaning of what could actually happen to you. So I mentioned that in a few stories there in the speaking in tongues section.
Yeah, you know, this even though you had Spanish at first, it was when you got to Mexico, they spoke Spanish, but they spoke it a little differently than what we, you know, learned in schools and all too. So
Right.
I thought, yeah, Spanish makes sense. When you started talking about you were looking at street signs to try and try just to read the signs, just to try and make something out to help understand things. And but you said, but being there 5 years, you said if you're going to be there and part of their culture and part of their, you owe them learning the language, and because you're part of it. Taiwan had a lot of cultural things, a lot of saving face type things. I know some of the food you'd look at and you question why anybody would want to eat it, but if they asked you to eat it, you had to say yes because of saving face.
You want to make them. Yeah, can't. I learned that from Tony. Says you embarrass them. You can't make them lose face. You know, and you're like, okay, so yeah, you had to eat it. Give it a good shot.
And one of the things you said in the book is that you learn how to chew your food without it touching your tongue from a flavor standpoint. I'm not quite sure how you did that, but something to eat the food that you thought wouldn't taste very good. You found a way around it. So
well, like they say, if you get hungry enough, you'll eat. And I just learned this little technique early on in my traveling career was just kind of keep it off your tongue, keep it on your teeth, just kind of break it real fast. So chomp, 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 and just swallow down some chunks that you can get down your throat. And that helped a lot. Yeah. So at times that really saved me. But then again, sometimes I'd actually chomp it and I go, wait a minute, this actually tastes kind of good. And I'd say, what is this? You know, but there's a lot of things in the culture in Taiwan about losing face, and you had to do a lot of different things to be able to be especially with your own teammates and friends that you make there.
Rain delays or non-delays. Taiwan, they played no matter what the weather, it sounded like.
Pretty much to a certain
Yeah.
extent. Yeah, the first game I kind of talk about is my very first game that I pitched in Taiwan. Now that was in 1995. I actually started the season with the Pirates and their AAA team. I was getting my shot back, and that another part of the story is of that was during the 1994 strike leading into the replacement player issue thing in spring training of 95. So I got my chance there, but off to Taiwan I went, and I forgot what was the question again. Lost track.
Rain delays.
Yeah. So I finally made it to Taiwan, and my very first game, I hadn't pitched in over a week or so, and we're driving on the bus to the ballpark, and it's pouring rain very hard. And I get to the stadium, we walk in there, and it's an all dirt infield stadium, grass outfield, and the field is literally all underwater. And I'm thinking, oh wow, here's my first game. Can you imagine this? Of course. And I say out loud, I don't think we're playing tonight. Someone said, nope, we'll be playing. Oh, really? So the rain finally stopped, and I tell them the story. I'll kind of tell a little bit about it, but when I saw about 15 or so Taiwanese kids in their sandals and their blue gym shorts and their white t-shirts with a bucket and a sponge in their hand, getting on the ground and stopping water and squeeze it in the bucket. And there's some guys with dragging some rakes sideways to put a gouge in the dirt infield, leading it towards making like a little river, size of a rake blade, and guiding it to a drain. And I'm like watching this in just disbelief. And I'm like, oh my God, you kidding me? And the guys, yeah, what? And that teammate came back to me and said, yeah, we'll be playing in about an hour. Oh, okay, let me see this one now. Sure enough. So they got that field ready, and it wasn't sloppy or dangerous. I stepped on it, it was solid. They worked on it and did their thing and got it dry, and we played. So I was like, to my extreme amazement, that we did get that in. And they would play a lot in the rain conditions because the fans would get upset, and they would get crazy. They would start tearing things apart and throwing on the field if they didn't play the game, and bad umpire calls too, get really crazy. But yeah, they played a lot of games, and there was a typhoon that came through Taiwan once. Now, we didn't play any games, which probably was the extent of not playing a game usually, but I do tell what we ended up having to have to do anyways. Literally in a hurricane, which is what a typhoon is, we were outside doing something. So I'll let the readers catch on to that one. I'll save a little cliffhanger there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but well, you had to go to, you may not be playing a game, but you had to go practice.
Yeah.
And you went out and practiced it, like, okay, we're not going to play for a week or two. You got to go out and it's but you're talking about the fans in the different countries. How would you compare compared to our country? I think fanship is probably different everywhere, but how would you compare, the fans in the different countries to here and to each other?
I would say, to talk about the fans in Taiwan, that was crazy. It was like you put the Super Bowl and major college football games, throw in the Italian Premier Soccer League together and put those on steroids. That was kind of like what our fans were kind of like in Taiwan. They loved their teams, and every game was a sellout. Now, we weren't playing no 50,000 seat stadiums. I think we were playing in like 15 to 18,000 seated parks that we played in, but it was like squeezed in. It was like they had bands playing musical instruments. They had these drums that they just bang, bang, bang. Several people with these big giant flags, they'd be waving across, they'd be running around the stadium. And, one half was one team's fans, the other half right down the middle. So if one fan would run across that line and shake the flag, they'd be jumped, and you saw these crazy fights and people getting bloodied. And, it was just extreme craziness that I'd never seen before in a baseball game, So it was very, very different. They followed the teams passionately. So that was the main thing there. If you want to talk about the fans, crazy.
Yeah. just the idea when you mentioned that one fan crossed that invisible line and they beat the living daylights out of them. You know, it's a
Here you-
ball game, but I guess that's like soccer in Europe can be like. It
Yeah.
sounds like well, but yeah, so, yeah. You mentioned the gambling in Taiwan. Now, I was familiar with this. My son had a company, and you did some videos with him and Tom Pippins. Oh, in 2000, I think, somewhere along there. And so I saw some of those videos. And when you think of gambling in Taiwan, I'm thinking, oh, they're gambling on baseball. And that's what the story starts out as. But your story goes a little deeper on the gambling.
Yeah. So that's what I was kind of talking about. That's the chapter 8, I believe.
Yeah.
There's just, gambling's like a big part of their culture there, and so we were beginning to hear stories that maybe there's some gambling gangsters and gamblers and all those kind of people getting involved. So me and a teammate, we started kind of looking out to see if we would notice it or not, because we weren't sure. You heard about it, but you weren't sure. So we kind of started looking out closer and seeing if things are being done a little bit different, if you can spot or notice anything like that. And there's a couple of times where I said, man, I mentioned in the book one point where I said, I threw this pitch, the guy did one of those big swinging bunts. He swung full swing, but kind of dribbled down the third base line. There's no way you're going to get the guy out at first base. And the ball was starting to roll foul, and my teammate grabbed it right on the line. Why not let it go foul? And I go, that was the first time I kind of thought maybe something was kind of a little fishy here. And then kind of got me thinking more fishy. About a week later, he's sporting this brand new watch, kind of had to pay some little money for that. So he kind of exposed himself. And then there was these stories about, more about these guys got a couple players on one of the teams was taken they got taken by these gangster guys because I guess they kind of supposedly were, made deals on both sides. So now they're caught in the middle, and these gangsters didn't quite like that. And then I'll just kind of give a little taste here. I can't give the whole story away, but I found myself in the middle of these gangsters who were wanting me to fix games or be a part of that, and how I had to try to get myself out of that situation.
Yeah. I'm sure when you started playing professional baseball, you never thought you'd have that situation come up when you were at the Brewers.
No. I mean, in Major League Baseball, every spring training, you would have the FBI guys come in and give us our big talk, and guys who've been to spring training for 20 years or so heard the same thing year after year after year. And there's always don't associate with guys that might be involved with gambling. Don't hang around guys that might be gangsters because they're going to try to force you into a situation. And they go through it every year. So, I always heard that and knew that. Never had anything at all come close. And then in Taiwan, the situation came up, and it's catches you off guard, and I was in a bad situation there. I'll put it at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In that same chapter, you start out, you were playing with Tony Pena, the catcher from the Pirates that we all probably remember. And you were there in the Winter League. And after a ball game, him and a couple of players, hey, why don't you come along with us? We're going to go out to a bar. And as they park in front of the bar down some dark road, they all start packing heat, putting guns on and stuff. And you said you noticed that there was a lot of packing heat in the DR, unlike before. But a little about that story, going into a bar and knowing everybody else is packing heat, but not you.
Right. Well, I always heard these crazy stories about going into Latin America and playing. So I was a little nervous anyways. And then, so, in the United States, anywhere you play, as you go into your clubhouse locker room, you put all your valuables in a bag, and they lock them up in a safe and stuff like that, and then after the game, they unlock it and you get your stuff, just so during the game, they're protected. Yeah. And so in the Dominican Republic, it's before our games start, we had this valuable box, and I go to put my wallet in there and my driver's license or whatever. I mean, all those, my money and all that. And all the time, I just see about 15 handguns are being stored in there too. So these guys carry their guns around for protection. It's just kind of crazy. So after this one game, we got back from a game, and Tony came up to me and just to be friendly and nice with me, say, hey, his brother was on the team, and another player said, hey, let's go out, let's have a few drinks somewhere and just show you around and have a good time. I said, okay, Tony's asked me, I'll have a good time. So as we drove to go from our stadium parking lot where the bus dropped us off at, and so I'm in his truck and we're driving down the street. We go down this main road and we kind of get off to another side street, and all of a sudden we're on a dirt road and we're driving down a little bit, and suddenly I see something run across this little road. I go, what the heck is that? They go, that's a wild pig. Oh man, okay. Where are we going where there's wild pigs running around? We drive down a little bit down the road, and I see off to the left there's like this building. So we go to this, as we turn in, there's this guardrail thing that stops everybody, and a guy comes running up at us with a shotgun in his hands. And I think, man, what kind of bars do these guys go to? Okay, so Tony speaks this guy in Spanish, and he ends up letting us in. We go park in the parking lot. And before we get out of the truck, I see these guys are putting knives in their pockets. They're sticking, guns down their socks and their waistbands and all this stuff. And I'm going, well, where's my gun? And they go, you don't need one. And I go, well, you guys obviously do. So anyway, into the bar we go, and I'm waiting for the gunfight to arise and see what happens there. But that was kind of a odd thing to see, that we're all packing to go into a bar to have a few drinks.
It just occurred to me, it's almost 8 o'clock and I've been hogging all the questions, guys. I'm sorry about that. I've been reading the book and just piles and piles of questions. I've been enjoying it so much. So if I hog the time, I apologize. Anybody have questions for Don?
I do. Don, when you were traveling, you mentioned you had a wife. Were you married at the time you played in all these exotic locales? And did you have family, or how did that work out? Did they ever travel with you?
Yep. In my chapter, one of the chapters, I think the family man or traveling man, I probably in both of those, I was married, and I had a small son at the time I first started doing these travels. And so my wife would fly around the world to Taiwan, or, the teams would pay for my family to come as part of them getting, foreign baseball players to come play there. And she'd bring my son, and she'd be on the flight. The flights were so long from the United States to Taiwan that you'd actually watch 3 movies on the flight. And so they got there, and the culture was really different for them. They're kind of finicky eaters, so they had to deal with that. And we'd have them plan to be in there for about, her and my son, for 6 weeks or so. And it'd be about after the second week or so, my wife would just say, I can't take it no more. The cultural thing, the language, the food. Me, I was always worried about that they might get lost, or they couldn't get to the ballpark, or something would happen, all these different things. So when she said she wanted to go, I said, I don't blame you. I mean, it was hard on me to try to take care of them. At the same time, they're trying to, come around to see me, but it was so hard and so different and so strange that, and then I think the next year when I was back in Taiwan, we tried again, and same thing kind of happened. So I get about 2 to 3 weeks out of them as most we can squeeze out. But, it's, the long distance, between your family and, being alone in a different country around the world, that was the hard part. And I think a point I try to make throughout the book is I saw a lot of good baseball players who I'd played in the major leagues, even in the minor leagues. These guys had some great baseball careers, and now they're coming to these different countries, and they struggle. I mean, they just couldn't play and perform. Like I say, the cultural differences, eating foods, and and another thing about when you're an American player and playing in these foreign teams, they expect you to be good, super good all the time. So you have one little bad game, and it's like they're already talking about getting rid of you. So there's a lot of pressure they put on you on top of all these things. And I saw, like I said, I saw a lot of guys come and go and just couldn't handle it and be released, or they would leave. There's a story in the book where this guy shows up and he leaves, surprise the team, and he just couldn't take it. He was a roommate of mine in Taiwan, and we went on a road trip, and we were only going to be gone for 3 days, so he brought 2 big suitcases and his baseball bag. I go, why are you traveling so heavily? He goes, I'm out of here. So, and he'd left that next morning without telling the team. And I've even heard stories about guys would fly around the world, land in Taiwan, and literally the next day they're on a plane going back home, because as soon as they went outside and saw just the craziness, just the traffic and just seeing how they drive cars there, and that some guys had left the very next day, one day, one and done. So that's the hard part. Yeah, trying to have the family and long distance, and being able to survive when they're there trying to visit.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned in the book that sometimes if you have breaks in the season, guys wanted to fly home to be with their families, and the team was always very reluctant to even allow it because guys often didn't come back. So,
yeah, a lot of times that would happen in winter balls, especially, right? Guys would go home for Christmas break, and then right after Christmas into New Year's was the finishing of the regular season, and then it was playoff, and then some guys wouldn't return. So, and then me in Taiwan, by my third year there, was it that we had this long break right at the halfway point of the season. So I flew home. And one of the reasons why, well, my wife and son is they were there, and I thought, we'd have this big break in between the, first and second half of the season. We can have a lot of time together. But we actually flew back home to California and spent some time there. And then I would return, and they returned to Milwaukee. So that's how I had that one trip that worked out for me. And I ended up doing it the following year too.
other questions?
Yeah, I've got another one actually, Don. Since you did play in so many varied locales, how does that come about? How do you wind up in Italy, for instance?
Well, how I ended up in Italy was while I was playing in Taiwan, and another American guy joined the team, and he had played in Italy, and he played in Mexico too. So, now he's in Taiwan himself, and he says, Don, before you quit and hang him up, go play 1 year in Italy. You'll love it. So I said, okay. So I think this is like my second year in Taiwan. And I ended up playing 5 years there. So after that 5th year playing in Taiwan, I said, you know what? I've had enough. I mean, it's just the travel. I mean, you're away from home a lot. In Taiwan, we'd get there about January the 10th, I think. It was usually the day I'd get there. And I wouldn't get home until end of October, or sometimes in the beginning of November. So you're gone for, a very long time. So after that 5th year, I go, okay, that's enough. The team I played on kind of struggled really bad. And I thought, my chances of getting to Japan, because Japan would take players out of Taiwan, the top players, and they bring others. So I always thought that'd be my opportunity, maybe go to Japan. That would also get me my chance back to the States. So I kind of saw that wasn't happening. And I thought, okay, I'm done. And I remember what that teammate said. He goes, why don't you go to Italy? Play there 1 year. You'll enjoy it. So I found some people who played in Italy. I had some contacts. So I called over to Italy, called a couple teams. They said, no, they're only allowed 2 non-Italian players to come over. So they already had their 2 guys. And I got this other team who was the team that won it all the year before. And I contacted them, and they said they wanted me. And I said, all right, I'd go there. Now the money wasn't much. I was making pretty decent money in Taiwan, and but Italy was, to me, I kind of consider it as like a paid vacation in Europe. So I went over there, and it was awesome. The food was great. My wife and son, and even my wife's mom, my mother-in-law, flew over there, and we had a great time. I had a nice little apartment. We were at this town was kind of a resort town in the summer. A lot of vacationers, and we were like a mile away from the beach. So we hung out on the beach all the time. It was a great, great, great experience. So I was glad that I did that. And it was because this guy suggested it to me before I hang him up, play 1 more year. And then Italy, was my last year playing professionally altogether.
Nice. Thank you.
What have you been doing since Italy? Are you still involved in baseball in any ways? Willie Miller does a lot of coaching and stuff. I got Willie's up here in West Bend, and so
Great.
he's always working with kids. Are you doing anything in baseball?
Yeah. I even before I was done playing professionally, I started kind of working with kids, in the off seasons, doing some pitching lessons with them. So I kind of started doing that. Former major league teammate of mine, Jim Gantner, We threw our own baseball camp. There was like a week-long camp every summer in Menominee Falls, and we did that for about 18 years. And then after my first year being done out of Italy, before that I met the local high school baseball coach here, and I'd play catch and get ready before I took off to to these different countries, And he had said at the time, "Hey, whenever you're done, would you consider being a coach in the high school program?" I said, "Man, I'll think about it." So when I was done, he contacted me, and that first year I couldn't commit because I was like, "Okay, what am I going to do now? What kind of a job do I got to get for the rest of my life?" And so I didn't do that first year because, well, maybe next year. So 1 year later comes around, he gets hold of me. I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." So I've been coaching high school baseball since the year 2002, and I'm returning again this next coming baseball season here. I'm not the head varsity coach. I like my role as I'm the JV coach. So for this will be like my 24th year being the JV coach coming up here. And I like just preparing the kids, and getting them ready for varsity. That's kind of like the role I take. He has to take care of, the varsity coach has to take care of all the planning and scheduling of buses and umpires and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. I go, just give me a team. Once our JV season ends, then there's a little bit left of the varsity team, and then the playoffs come around, and I always then assist with that. So I get to enjoy that fun of it. But yeah, I've been coaching for a while. I really love the game, and I love teaching it to the young kids at the high school level. And so, I get my definite fix, and I still pitch. I pitched again this last season in the 55 and older league now that I've joined. And I look forward to playing those games there. And I actually thought it'd be real easy to pitch against these guys. And actually, they're really good because they've been playing baseball and swinging a bat for over 50 years. So they can actually make contact. And so it's fun challenge. We're all older and we're all slower, equally slow, but it's fun to play the game anyways. And afterwards we sit around, maybe have a couple beers and tell some stories. So I still do my baseball stuff.
Have you been at the same high school the entire time?
Yep, the same high school the entire time.
Wow. Cool.
I've been asked a few times over after I was done playing baseball. I've had the Brewers once asked me if I wanted to be a minor league coach. I've had some coaches who I knew around were independent, professional baseball coaches wanted me to be their pitching coach. A couple of colleges, local little small colleges, asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, no, I've traveled. I was gone long enough. After my last year, my son was 8 years old. I was already missing a lot of things with his school and his sports and things like that. So I didn't feel like traveling and being gone anymore. So I thought I'd just stay home, and right down the street, the local high school I coach at. And so I was able to, see my son grow up and be a part of all his things. So made it work out just fine.
You traveled plenty, so you're entitled to stay home now, I think.
Yeah.
Did anybody that you coached, progress to like college or anything further?
Yeah, I've had some kids. I haven't had any kids who I did personal private pitching lessons with. I know some of them ended up getting drafted and played in the minor leagues, but never to the majors. In high school, we've had some kids going on to, play college baseball. I mean, between Division III schools all the way up to Division I. So it's kind of really cool to see your guys move on to a next level. And then some of them did play in minor league baseball too. So that's always kind of a fun thing to see these guys learn the game, and you watch them, from the time they're ninth graders, freshmen in high school, graduate from high school, go through college, and then become these young men even, and I think always a fun part, which in a certain way may sound weird, but the kids I've been doing these lessons with and coaching, I've been doing it long enough. They're in their late 30s and pushing 40 years old now, and they have kids of their own now, and they start looking like 40-year-old guys. And I remember them when they were little kids, basically playing baseball. And, I got to then self-reflect at myself and go, wow, what has that done to me now? So, but it's always good to see that you can help kids out. And, I love the game, and I'd like them to learn it and love it just as much as me.
Well, you'll wind up coaching the kids of those guys, right? You'll wind up with a second generation.
Yeah, I started having that now. So now the kids that I now who I had coached are bringing their kids to me now. So yeah, I've gotten to that point. Tell the kid, I remember when I was coaching your dad, he did the same thing, just kind of say, hey, got to do it.
Yeah. Do you tell any of those kids, you throw harder than your dad did or anything, or do you got to be careful there? So
I don't think I've done that yet, but that's a good thought. If I need to lighten up the moment or something, right?
yeah. You've been doing this for 24 years. There's a lot of changes in baseball in the last 24 years from a pitching standpoint with all the analytics. Have you seen that? Are you teaching some of that as well?
I really don't like where baseball's changed. Baseball always changes. I don't like the analytics all. Now, back in our day, we did have scouting reports and and all that kind of stuff, but we didn't make that totally dictate. That was just to help us, where nowadays the analytics is like they got to play by the book, and I think it's too much of that. I'm glad to see that they're bringing some of the small ball back in the game. Looks like they're stealing more bases and they're starting to bunt a little bit more. So I like that style of the game when it kind of really was, the pendulum was really swinging that way. I really didn't like that. But at the high school level, it hadn't really trickled down to there really. So, we still kind of use the bunt at the high school level and stealing the bases and, playing the game, which I like to play. In the major leagues now, they're, like I said, they're swinging back a little bit. So I'm glad. So if I want to answer the question, do I like the analytical stuff and that? No, I didn't. I don't like that 100 pitch count thing where everyone's got to get scared about. I felt the more you throw, the stronger you get. I think in the major leaguers, they get to close to 90 something pitches and everyone's starting to get scared and freaking out. They have to go to the bullpen, even when that pitcher is pitching very good. I always say, keep your hot hand in until the situation arises. Then you kind of take him out, but should be this automatic type of a thing. Now, we don't overthrow kids at the high school level, but I'm talking about professionally, this 100 pitch thing. I remember, back in the day, the manager let you go out. Tom Trouble, my manager at the Brewers, I remember I had 8 innings. I had a shutout going. I went out to the 9th inning, and I think I went to that inning with like 120 something pitches already. Heck, I go out there, I threw the final inning, I got my shutout. It's like getting a shutout was kind of a big thing, especially getting a complete game, which those things hardly ever happen nowadays. I mean, It's hard to see a guy stay in the game when he's got a no-hitter through 8 or 9 innings. That guy's like 95 pitches and they take him out. These guys can easily pitch one more inning to get a no-hitter, at least try. In our day, if you did pitch a lot, we did keep track of the pitches, but that means, oh God, he's gonna be a little bit more tired. So then maybe you push your bullpen day back a day, or maybe you pitch on the 6th day instead of on your 5th day, and then you just jump right back into it, So I know sports medicine and, and that stuff with, the medical part of it, I understand it, but I pitched through it. I know they're grown men. They're strong as heck, they can do it. So that's my take on it.
Not to bring in a whole new topic, but when you mentioned this, game 3 of the playoffs, when they pulled Tobias Myers after 5 innings and he was pitching very, very well, that felt like dictated. He's pitching through 5 and then we go to the bullpen. I just felt that was an analytics dictate because he was pitching too well to pull him. I know he was going through the lineup the 3rd time. Well, okay. Let him face the first guy. If he's struggling, you can always pull him.
Right. Once they struggle, once you get a couple guys on base, okay, but you let the guy go on. It's like this thing now about the 3rd time seeing the lineup. Well, why don't they look at the other? I know they look at the stats and the hitting, but how about the 3rd time when I've seen the batter 2 times now I really see his holes and his weaknesses on that given day. So yeah, 3rd time through, 100 pitches, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and that in the playoffs, they really go even more overboard on that kind of stuff about taking guys out way too soon, and they rely too much on the bullpen. And I mean, you can't overburn out the bullpen. They're trying to say they're not want to burn out starting pitchers, but they burn out their bullpens, I think, too much, in my opinion, with this.
Yeah.
You had 6 complete games in 1988.
Yep.
You know it from where you speak.
Yeah. I always felt the more I pitch, the stronger I get.
Mhm.
You know, I feel like my arm gets bigger, stronger, and more built up. I feel like I can go over 100 pitches by easily if I needed to. I feel like my pitches are sharper and crispier and more of that touch. I always felt that was the benefit to me. Let me pitch, till I'm struggling and men get on base and the game dictates that I come out. Not that it's just this automatic preset, 5 innings and done. And this guy's got the 7th inning, he's got the 8th, and he's got the 9th. So I hope it swings back before I get way too old.
Do you do clinics at Miller Park or AmFam Field? I still call it Miller Park.
Yeah, I know. I still call it Miller Park. It's real hard to call it AmFam Field.
Me too.
Yeah, once a year they do a 1-day baseball clinic there at Helfer Park. That little league field that's like in the parking lot. So they have a camp they do there. The Brewers have their in the summertime throughout the whole summer for about 8 to 10 weeks. Every week there's in 2 different places. So I do about 4 to 5 of those every year during the summer, where I go to these different places. Sometimes they're in Brookfield or in Hartford. All the places around here, I go do those too. And they're a Monday through Friday type of a thing, and so I do those clinics. Yeah.
So I used to do tours at the ballpark, and we'd bring people onto the field, and you were always very nice. So because we were kind of disrupting your clinic, I thought it was you.
Oh, yeah. I always try to be nice to people. You're supposed to be nice to people. People will see me there as a former Brewer and that sort of thing. They're excited. They have good old memories and stuff like that. And I just love remembering and talking. I guess one reason why I write the book, because I like talking about it and just telling things that happen and just making everyone have a good time. Being at the ballpark, should be happy.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Don, we always have speakers and we always ask 100 questions. Let me ask you, do you have a question for us? It's something I started doing. We pepper you with questions. Heck, do you have one for us?
Oh, geez. Quick question here off the top of my head. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of a question like, because I'm in the same place now about being a fan. I'm not in the professional baseball league, so I go to Brewer games still, as many as I can. Just like, maybe I look at it differently. Like when you're coming to the ballpark, what are your expectations as a fan when you get there from the players and the team or whatever? What's a good day for you at the ballpark?
I was at the last ball game of the season with Mary, and we had very nice seats, and the atmosphere with the team going into the playoffs was very special. And we were out in the area where a lot of kids were sitting, and so with all these kids, the energy out there was just it was a very enjoyable ball game. It wasn't the greatest ball game. It was a good ball game, but it was just the atmosphere, the fans, and everybody around were just very good, and that was fun. It was just good company. We talked baseball and other things, and but it was just watching the kids, Mary. I mentioned that when we were at the game that there's a lot of kids there. Was really fun. So
yeah, I think that's a good part. Back in my time was just trying to make the kids happy, because I remember being a kid going to Dodger Stadium and Angel Stadium and seeing the players there. And, I at times, I'd toss a ball to a kid in the stands, and it'd be 20 something years later, this guy would come up to me and he'd get me to sign the ball. I've seen that. And they'd bring the ball back to me. You gave this to me when I was a little kid. Now he's a grown man, back in the day at County Stadium. So I think, you learn, and I think I learned a lot watching, maybe Robin Yount at the time, when I was a young player and he was the veteran major leaguer, and just how he acted as a professional baseball player. He'd sign autographs and he'd do as many as he could, but it's about, making the fans come to the ballpark to want to see you. And it might be their only time that they see you. And I never realized until that one fan brought the ball back to me, and it happened on more than one occasions like this, that, that was something they remembered forever, that I gave them a ball, and just made their day. So I always thought, I go to the ballpark, I want to have a good time and, and have an enjoyable moment watching the game and watching the players. And, unfortunately I saw a lot of players who were just really on themselves, like they're too big. They think they're really special. Like, the fans were these little people and, they're the star and, they'd ignore them or say things kind of rude to them at times. I thought, wow, how did you turn into that? But so I always like to make the fan happy when I was at the ballpark.
Yeah. Any other questions for Don? Let me, again, I've read a number of baseball books this year. I've read more baseball books this year than I've had in the last 3 years, I think, because we've had so many good people writing books. And Don, honest to God, I'm not saying this because you're here. This is my favorite book of the year. It's just so readable. The stories are interesting. The whole approach, I think how you set up the book is very, very, I like the approach. As I got in the second chapter and it wasn't going into chronological, it took me the first few pages to get over that. And I thought, no, this really makes sense. But at first I went, wait a minute, we're going from here to, you didn't go into the whole minor. I was waiting for the whole thing. It was perfect. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the book so much that this is why I wanted to have you on here. And one question I do have left that I didn't is your chapter 11, the end. How many people remember that old Doors song? That's pretty dark song. I thought, wow, he's got the end on here.
Well, the Doors are my favorite rock band of all time. So that's why I got People Are Strange in there and Gone Through and The End. And that was like the ending of my baseball career. So that's the topic for that. So just the book is good. It's pretty clean on the most part. There are a couple little, my wife told me there's a couple of adult situations, people might not understand. I go, but it all happened, and I'm not hiding anything. I didn't use people's names or any bad or inappropriate ways. So kept that all, clean and nice and stuff like that. But
not a lot of baseball language.
Yeah, there's no baseball language, and guys over years old, ball players. We go out and have our beers. We go out to places. What do you do after a game? A lot of times it's going out and have a few drinks, and sometimes things can turn into whatever, but nothing bad, nothing real horribly bad in there. So maybe it might be a part.
You can get your wife a used copy of Ball 4, and then she could read your book again, and it would be fine, right?
Yeah, I did actually read Ball 4. I read that book, so I had the back of my mind at the time when Ball 4 was written. It's like not really people knew much of the background or the off the field kind of stuff that's going on. And this book has a lot of really off the field things that just happen to you as a person trying to play baseball. It does talk about certain games and has the baseball atmosphere, going to the ballpark and this happened and that happened. But it's really about being an American guy just trying to survive and play the game in these different parts of the world. So
yeah.
Well, that's what makes it interesting. I think I haven't seen it yet, but I will. But I think as fans, we think we understand the game part and observing you on the field and the other players, but we don't see any of that other stuff. So that is, kind of access that we would never have. And it sounds really cool. And as I said, I think it would be a great movie. And then we have the soundtrack. You already picked out all the songs.
I think that's some songs already got to be right. Yeah.
We have to. All right. Here's I got to hop to do some 7th grade homework. But question is, in the movie, which will happen, who do you want to play? Or ask your wife this question: who plays you?
Well, she'll probably have to say the same thing. It has to be a very handsome, good-looking actor that has to play in my role. But they have to have some baseball athleticism, though. I'll say I'll bring up a couple movies where one movie the guy actually looks like he's a baseball pitcher. The other movie, you can tell the guy looks a little funky out there and he's just an actor. The movie Major League with Charlie Sheen as a pitcher. Now he pitched in high school, so he had some form to his pitch and he threw the ball like he could throw a ball. So I'd say he did a good job in that movie. In the movie Bull Durham, Nuke LaLoosh, when you watch him pitch, it's like, you know, the actor did his move, and then when they threw the ball, it was like, then the camera showed the ball coming, you know, that didn't really show him actually pitching, right? He looked a little too funky. So the guy, whoever plays my role, again, has to be very handsome, and he has to be able to look like he's actually a pitcher or a baseball player.
Yeah.
Now, what guy could that be? I don't know off the top of my head here.
Yeah.
All right, we'll think of something. It was
Yeah.
very cool. Thank you.
I've got everybody on here. I'm going to send you a copy of the book. I appreciate your being here. Thank you, Don. I appreciate it. In the Milwaukee area, the World Series Club, Don's going to be a guest sometime in November.
Yep.
Like the 16th, I think. You know, I only wrote a newsletter and put it all under. I think I'd remember what I typed, but I think it's something like November 16th.
I got here.
Yeah, and so Don will be there.
I got November 14th, unless it's changed.
14th, okay, yeah. And I'm planning on being there. And so it'll be another opportunity. So, but everybody here, I will get a book out to you. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, Don. Thank you.
All
Anybody
right.
want to
Well,
come around and talk afterwards? We can do that as well. I'm going to end the recording right now. And thank you, Don. Any final words of wisdom?
for me?
Yeah.
Or, oh, I thought someone had some words of wisdom going my way. No, just I'm glad there's people that enjoy baseball enough that we can write books like this, and people are fans and love to hear more different things that go on in the game. And you know, just like I do, I still enjoy the game all the time.
Yeah.
I've many games as I can, and I love being a part of it. So I'll end it.
Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody.